That's better. You can hear me now. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome in, welcome in.
Hello.
And welcome to my co-host, Livia, who is also here. And this is the first episode of the Quill and Vial Elder Scrolls lore cast.
Yes.
So this is something that Livia and I have been talking about for a while. We're both lore nuts. We're both passionate about the Elder Scrolls universe, and we wanted another way to connect with the ESO fan. So let me just sorry, I just fiddle around with my OBS. So before we start, I figured we'd give everyone an introduction to who we are. For viewers of my stream, you've probably encountered us both before, both me on screen and Livia as a partner in crime. But I'm Cynical Alchemist. You can call me Cynical, you can call me Alchemist, or you can call me Dave. I'm a gamer, a streamer, a scientist in real life, and a Scot that lives in Australia. I've been playing Elder Scrolls games since 2016, when Skyrim was released on Special Edition. I moved to Elder Scrolls Online in 2017 when the Morrowind chapter was released. I've done some modding with Skyrim, I've done some writing for some mods, and I've messed around with a bit of fan fiction before I started streaming. So, Liv, do you want to give the audience an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Olivia, as you all might know. I have been playing the Elder Scrolls series for quite a long time. I think we're now on I think I'm now on a decade or more. So I've been playing these games for quite a long time, been a very big fan. They've been a very important part of my life. And as Dave said, we are definitely keen to do some content with it. But a little bit more about me, I guess. I'm a writer. I've done some extensive fan fiction about my characters within the Elder Scrolls universe, specifically about my one character who happens to have the same name as me and is happening to sit in game right now. I do role playing as well, and in various different venues, and just overall a very big fan of the Elder Scrolls. I worked on a couple of other projects in some capacity regarding the Elder Scrolls as well, but nothing super major. That's pretty much it.
Cool. So we have Livia the VTuber as part of
yes.
So she's represented in game by her character.
Yes.
And for the audience, just to give you a little bit of an explainer about how the podcast will function. So the scope of the podcast is Elder Scrolls lore of particular types. We'll each have a particular aspect of the lore that we're going to be covering in each episode, and that's what we hope will make the podcast unique. But in general, the podcast will cover more than just our lore segments. We're going to be talking about everything that's happening with regards to Elder Scrolls games, releases, news, anything that's connected to Tamriel that's currently on social media, and that may or may not include discussions on body pillows of various Daedric princes.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have a whole section regarding that when those come up.
Yeah, indeed, yes. So every episode will start with a casual catch-up where Livy and I will just shoot the breeze, figure out what each of us has been up to, and in Elder Scrolls games we'll cover current news. We'll hopefully at some point in the future have some guest interviews, hopefully, to tap into other aspects of the ES fandom and the ES lore that we don't cover ourselves. And then once we've dealt with the prelude, if you like, we'll get into the meat of the episodes, which is the lore segments, which from my side, I'm going to be exploring the alchemy of Elder Scrolls, the reagents, the potions, the origins of alchemy, the quests, the importance of alchemy to the overarching lore. So each episode I'll have a little reagent that I'll focus on, and I'll look at how the game treats it, I'll look at how if there's real world analogues to these regions, how they appear to us in the real world, how we interact with them in the real world, and also maybe in some cases I'll see whether there's a crossover in the use of this type of alchemy region in other fantasy universes. So, Liv, do you want to give a little explainer on your lore delving?
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of other podcasts who do lore really, really well and make it very accessible. And my interest within the Elder Scrolls lore has been the smaller things, the smaller corners of lore. So that includes mostly things that are found in in-game works of fiction, in the universe, I guess, in-game and universe pieces of fiction. So those are really interesting to me because I just think that adds another layer of depth to the Elder Scrolls universe being like a living, breathing universe where they even have their own pieces of fiction, like written by people within the universe. I think that's just really fantastic. And a lot of the pieces that are written are like historical fiction, even like Elder Scrolls historical fiction. So yeah, those are the really things that interest me, and that's what I'll be going into in my section. I'm calling my section Tamriel Obscura because these are very obscure sort of pieces of lore. So yeah, that's something that I think that people will enjoy, old and new, and may have some people wanting to delve a little bit deeper into things and maybe check out less traveled paths of lore.
Cool. So slightly disparate lore segments, but we hope that they're going to present something new to the listener. So we're excited about the start of this process. It's nerve excited as I expressed on Twitter earlier on today.
Yeah, it is very exciting, and it's like I was saying too, and just like you were saying, Dave, there's a lot of there's a lot of places that do things very, very well. A lot of podcasts our peers now, I guess, do things very well, and I think this offering something new to the space is going to be fun.
Yeah. So let's kick off. Let's get into the agenda of the podcast. Casual catch-ups. What have you been up to in Elder Scrolls games since we last chatted?
Since we last chatted, I've been struggling with Skyrim and the modding of Skyrim. It's just been such a I've not had a fun time with that. It's just like I almost am thinking that I should just replay without any mods, even though I want characters, dark elves especially, not to look ugly.
Elves in the traditional Elder Scrolls games are on the aesthetically challenged side. I certainly agree there.
Definitely.
Yeah, but mod it till it breaks is definitely something that is a phrase that's used heavily with Skyrim, and it's very easy to mod a game, Skyrim, until it breaks. So I feel your pain.
That could be anywhere between infinite mods or 3 mods without breaking the game.
Yeah. So I did actually pop into Skyrim just earlier today, just looking around for this particular alchemy region I'm going to be talking about later in the episode. And I forgot, awesome. I always forget how beautiful Skyrim is, just to wander around. It's a different kind of beauty to Elder Scrolls Online. They're both beautiful games, but Skyrim is much more grounded in what we kind of experience in the real world and the outdoors, whereas Elder Scrolls Online is just a little bit separate, I think, in terms of the aesthetic. Skyrim just makes me think about walking in the mountains in Scotland, and it's nice to get that connection. So I'm similar to you. I think I'm overdue some time back in Skyrim. Yeah.
Do you feel like the Skyrim offers like more? I don't know. This is the only word that I can think of, is more grandeur to the spaces. I feel like the spaces are so much more, open.
It certainly does. It's got a more impressive vibe to it. I mean, for example, I was in Morthal, which obviously appears now in both Elder Scrolls Online and Skyrim, and it just seemed more atmospheric. It seemed more, it seemed colder, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
the color scheme is definitely, yeah.
So it's they're very different games, very different feel to both games. I love both, but it's I think I'm going to spend a bit more time in Skyrim because I've been spending so much time in ESO. ESO has dominated all my gaming pretty much for the last God knows however many years. And it's sometimes nice to get out of the gear grind, you know. I spend most of my time in Elder Scrolls Online harvesting gear or leveling characters, and only sometimes I put time aside to do the questing. Whereas with Skyrim, questing's the whole thing, you know. It's
right.
So
gear will come as it will. I mean, you get good gear from quests mostly, and you know, otherwise it's just leveled gear.
Yeah.
Actually, I like Skyrim a lot.
Talking about Skyrim, well, Skyrim is a big part of news and current events for Bethesda at this current time. We just did QuakeCon, and there were some significant announcements there. What was your take on what was announced for Skyrim?
Already a professional at the transitions. That's perfect.
Yep, I've been reading my how to podcast notes.
That was a good one. That was a smooth one.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of just deviate a little bit from the Skyrim stuff, like literally, I was working earlier today and I was looking on Twitter and I saw that, or no, I wasn't looking at Twitter. I was looking at YouTube and I saw that Bethesda posted 3 videos about Starfield, the next upcoming game. So, yeah, it was, you know, as you can tell, as you can expect, I like immediately hung up on it, or, you know, finished what I was doing and started watching the videos. And there was 3 of them, and they were going over different. Now, I read somewhere that they were different planets, but I got the idea that they were different cities inside of planets. I don't know. Did you get that kind of?
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah, and Emil didn't give much of an explainer for it, but it did seem that it was different cities, focusing on the cities that were within planets that were within the universe that we're going to be encountering.
Yeah, and I seem to have deleted one of those on the show notes. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I wrote up kind of like a very brief summary of each of the cities that they went over. It seems like, well, we'll go over them first, then we'll talk about what it seems like. So one of them was this city called Neon, which is an old fishing facility on this all water planet, or all like oceanic planet, and apparently the fishermen, or the people who were fishing there, figured out that the fish at this particular planet contained a psychedelic agent, and these fishermen found that selling that psychedelic agent as a drug was making them more money. So the fishing platforms and the fishing city turned into this pleasure city, where we can only assume that many different things that we would consider crimes happen, as far as drugs go and indulgence goes. So that's pretty much Neon. The videos are up on YouTube, on Bethesda's YouTube page, but the city is very colorful and neon lights, as one would expect with a city called Neon. One of the next one that they went over was a city called New Atlantis, and they said that it was the United Colonies, which they called the UC. So I'm assuming that's akin to the USA, or some other type of large military and political organization. It was the UC's capital, and they stated that it was a, quote, melting pot of races, ethnicities, creeds, and there was something else, but they said specifically races and ethnicities. So, I mean, I know that they've confirmed that there's other races, but I'm thinking that's like confirmation that there's alien races in this video game.
Well, that would be cool. That'd be very, very cool.
I'm hoping so. because what's a Bethesda game without being able to play? Well, I guess Fallout doesn't really have different races, but or different
not
alien
playable
races.
ones, but you experience different races, whether it's synths
That's
or whether
true.
it's super mutants or.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But yeah, so that's the New Atlantis. It just seemed like a very standard, what you would see like in Halo, what you would see in Mass Effect, that kind of feel of a large united colony. And then the last one was called Aquila, which was they called the capital of something called the Free Star Collective. It's a free city, so I'm assuming free of maybe it's like a conglomerate of different colonies. I think it said a conglomerate of 3 different star systems or something like that, something to that effect.
It kind of made me think of in Firefly and Serenity, the outer planets, and the kind of lawless west, the space west that you get in other IPs. Frontierism,
I can totally see that.
Frontierism. And also, I guess in the Star Wars universe, the outer planets as well, which like Tatooine and those places where the outlaws hang out and things. So it kind of there's a lot of precedent for that type of thing in space fiction. So I think it's a good thing to lean into for Bethesda. Yeah,
I think so too. And I think that's now that you say that, that's totally the feel that I got. So I totally agree. They made note there was a specific emphasis on the city being surrounded by walls, and there being this hostile alien predator that's like the cross between a wolf and a velociraptor. So I mean, they made a point to mention that, so I'm assuming we're gonna encounter those in the game.
Well, if what is going to be the death claw of the Starfield universe?
Oh God. Yeah, if it's a wolf and a velociraptor, it could be pretty big. The death claw and the troll or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, as you and I were kind of talking before, I think I think it's safe to assume, or at least it's natural to assume, that we have our 3 factions right here: a crime syndicate, military power, and then a more free power of people, I guess.
Rebels, frontier people.
Rebels. Yeah, there you go.
I mean, it kind of maps onto much of Bethesda's structures of games. So in Fallout, you've got the Brotherhood of Steel, you've got Raiders, and you've got I guess in some games you've got the Minutemen. In other games, it's some people who are on I guess a little bit on the edge of society, but there's probably some good in them, but it's more pragmatic good than lawful good.
Yeah. Definitely. And then, and I mean, obviously, with Bethesda, as we know, we say good, not with saying that they're the good guys, because no, it could be anybody's game, really.
Yeah. I mean, as with the Elder Scrolls game, you can be in any of the different factions. With Fallout, you can win the game with each of the factions, or you can find a way to help for more than one faction to be ascendant at the end. But normally, it's the case you tend to lean into one or the other. So it's likely the game structure will allow you to pursue each of those factions and win with each of those factions. So and the outcomes of the game will be dependent upon which faction you favour during your playthrough.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interconnectedness with them too.
Yeah. So yeah, I caught those videos earlier on today as well, and I was very excited. I'm very, very excited about Starfield. As much as Bethesda gets a good kick in online from the haters, I'm ride or die Bethesda when it comes to games. I'm very much looking forward to Starfield.
Yeah, I'm ride or die too. I don't particularly play the Fallout games, but I have, and I've enjoyed my time with them. But yeah, I'm ride or die with Bethesda, and really the only reason they get such Bethesda becomes such a meme is with the next thing that we're going over. See, I can do transitions.
Indeed.
Too.
Transition, love it. Absolutely love it. Go on.
I was just gonna say.
Oh, we'll come. Yeah, we're coming back to Skyrim, the QuakeCon announcement. So this was heavily memed. I don't know if anyone picked up on this, or if you've been under a rock, you would have missed the fact that we're coming up to the 10-year anniversary of Skyrim, and we can't reach a milestone like that without Bethesda giving us yet another release of Skyrim, and we were not disappointed. Now I think I think this is all tied up a little bit in the new next generation consoles in lots of ways. And it's something I think a lot of PC players fail to remember, is that more than 2/3 of all of Bethesda's sales come from consoles. People think that it's PC Master Race, but the vast majority of the money that Bethesda has made over the years has come from console sales. And that's the case for Fallout, it's the case for Fallout 4, it's the case for Fallout 4, it's the case for Skyrim. So when there's a new console release, a new generation of console hardware, you got to expect them to do a little bit to catch on that wave. And I think this is what they've done with the increase of the FPS, the increase in the screen resolution you now get with PS5s and Xbox One X's, for the next generation of players to experience Skyrim on this advanced hardware. They were always going to do something, and this is the thing they've done. So the PC players can whine and moan and meme about it, but Bethesda are paying attention to their core business.
Todd said if people stop buying it, we'll stop making it, or stop putting it on different systems. So, obviously they're making money. Yeah.
So I mean, so we've got a few things. There's some nice stuff around the side. There's the Skyrim Museum, which is an online gallery of fan art and cosplayers that you can access through the Bethesda website to celebrate Skyrim's 10-year anniversary. I had a quick look at that yesterday. There is the free upgrade to the special edition, which is what there was a lot of confusion about this on the day of the announcement. There's a free upgrade to the special edition that includes fishing, that includes survival mode, and includes new quest, Creation Club content, Saints and Sinners, which is a Daedric quest involving Sheographs, saints, and other types of Daedric nonsense. So there's three creation three Creation Club content pieces that will be added to Special Edition for free in celebration of the 10-year anniversary. But that's different from the Anniversary Edition, and that's where a lot of people got mixed up, because the Anniversary Edition is coming out, and that's the big release for the consoles, and it'll be the big release for PC, where all 48 Creation Club items will be included in the package, and that is what's going to cost. It's going to be a paid upgrade for PC, and this is there was a lot of people, streamers even, saying, "Oh, it's going to be a free upgrade." No, the Anniversary Edition is not a free upgrade. They're gonna. They haven't released pricing, and I'm actually quite curious to see what kind of pricing they're going to put on it. I don't know. Have you bought much Creation Club content with Skyrim?
No, I have not. I was considering getting the Nyx Hounds, obviously, because Denver for life. But I didn't think it was that expensive. But you have to buy Bethesda's currency on their website. Like the
$12.
Like the equivalent of crowns.
$12.
Yeah, $12. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess that's $12 to get a Nyx Hound. I don't know. That's something that I would pay for. But I can see, people who aren't Bethesda ride or dies, being upset about that.
Yeah.
Or just saying that's a lot, because I could see it being $5.
I mean, I've always been quite open to the Creation Club. Again, I started my gaming history is been mostly on PC, but for a big stretch in the 2010s, from about 2015 to 2018, I was primarily a console gamer. I was primarily an Xbox gamer.
Oh, okay.
And that's the platform that I played Fallout 4 and Skyrim on. And for me, accessing mods was possible with those games, but I was aware of the fact that for many people, especially PlayStation players, the mods you could get for consoles was very limited. So the Creation Club was filling a need for a third of the playing public, because because PlayStation sales account for a third of all Fallout 4 and Skyrim sales, just like Xbox is a third and PCs is a third. So a third of the playing public didn't have access to mods. Xbox players did. I did. I downloaded all sorts of crazy mods using the in-game mod manager that you got with consoles.
Yeah.
So I could see the need for Creation Club. I could see it from the modder's perspective as well. I used to hang out in Discords with people like Eleonora and Unreal, a lot of very prominent Skyrim modders. I used to hang out in their Discords, and these are the people who've benefited from. And Chris Takahashi, who does interesting NPCs, one of the best Skyrim mods.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Chris Takahashi, Eleonora, and many others, Fading Signal, big Fallout 4 and Skyrim modders were taken in by Bethesda to actually be paid to create content, and I thought that was a really good thing for them. And credit to them, none of the people who were connected to became exclusive Creation Club creators. Eleonora still publishes Skyrim mods and Fallout 4 mods. Chris,
all the time, yeah.
Chris has been a bit more quiet in the modding front. I'm expecting something big from him for Starfield, because he's always done a massive package for. He did it for Fallout 3, he did it for Fallout 4, he's done it for Skyrim. It would be crazy if Chris didn't come up with a massive quest mod for Starfield. And he does really good companions. He does really good followers in his mods. So I'm hopeful he'll come up with something good for Starfield. But anyway, their Creation Club content is top notch, which is why I'm actually quite interested to see how much it's going to cost for the upgrade to the Anniversary Edition, because there is some good stuff in the Creation Club. A lot of the stuff for Fallout 4 and for Skyrim I've gotten free, because every month they will occasionally have a creation free, and you can just go in, you can get it, you don't have to pay for it, no Todd bucks, it's just free, you just take it. So I've accumulated in both Skyrim and Fallout 4 over the years quite a bit of Creation Club content for both, simply from the free giveaways. But Todd bucks does cost a lot of money. So it'll be interesting to see how much they're going to charge for the anniversary upgrade, because to get all of those 48 creations, including the ones that are released and the ones that aren't released, would cost a lot of Creation Club dollars, and thus a lot of real world dollars. So I'll be interested to see how they price it. But I am very open to Creation Club.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good system as well. I think, especially them paying creators to make stuff. I'm generally not against cash shops, if they are not, you know how like ESO does it. It's nothing that's game breaking or giving you any advantage. So I think like cosmetic stuff is perfect, because like, do I really need a Nixhound skin for a dog? No, but do I want it? Yeah.
Yes,
like that's gonna,
Yes.
So, and the quest stuff too, and that they actually pay people to do that is awesome. I think it's good.
Yeah.
And to what you were saying earlier about like a third of the population on each console and then on PC respectively, I think my history with Skyrim, I bought it on. I used to play on PS4 a long time ago, so I bought it on PS4. I bought it for an old laptop that I had. I bought it for Nintendo Switch. I got it again for on Steam, and then I have it again now for Xbox. Because they like stream games now that I can play. So so it's like, there are people who have purchased it a lot, and I'm sure. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people who bought it as many times as me, but I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Yes.
That's
Bethesda just reaches into your wallet and leaves behind a copy of the next version.
I see Bethesda, I just take my wallet and just throw it at them. That's basically what happens.
Take my money. Yes. Yeah. The classic Futurama gif.
Yeah, exactly.
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
So I say the QuakeCon had a lot of other stuff happening. I guess Skyrim's announcement was quite brief, but it was impactful on social media. But there was a lot more that was talked about at QuakeCon, and I guess the biggest thing from a Elder Scrolls perspective would be the Waking Flame DLC.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So have you had a chance to try the dungeons yet?
I have not. So no spoilers, please.
No, I haven't done the dungeons either. I've barely even I can barely even remember their names.
I know. I'm having to look them up too. I'm so prepared. Red Petal Bastion and the
Red
Dread
Petal
Cellar.
Bastion, Dread Cellar, that's the ones. So there's, I mean, apparently there's some nice lore around it. There's the Imperial Battle Mages, and there's a Daedric cultist theme to the other one. There's some nice new body markings and face markings associated with some of the achievements. And they actually look pretty good. Actually, there's Daedric, but not like overpowering Daedric. Not like, and as you would have known from the body markings that have come out in the last 24 months, 2 years, the body markings are much more refined, like fine tattoos rather than just daubed on paint. And this one's pretty good actually. It's one of those ones that I might actually try and do the achievement to get.
Yeah, it looks good. I'm looking at one of the screenshots on the site now, and yeah, it looks good. I agree. It's become way more refined than just like the ones you got at base, or not at base game, at the beginning, or with one Tamriel with the just like smears.
Yeah, they've definitely upped their game with regards to the body cosmetics, and that actually, it's one of those things that one of the other things about the Waking Flame DLC is we've got a new armor motif, Waking Flame, funnily enough, which exposes a lot of skin when worn by a character, and this is something that was I picked up from Finn, the dungeon designer in Slashlark streams a couple of weeks ago. He was saying that they specifically targeted armor styles for this year's release that would allow players to have the characters display their body markings much more prominently, i.e. there's lots of skin on display, which is always a big thing for the ESO fam, for the fashion scrollers out there. Motifs that show skin are always the pages that go for lots of money on guild stores. The playing public want to be able to display their finely honed character bodies. It's definitely a big part of the ESO fam fashion scrolls culture, I think. So I think they've come up with a winner there, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. They look good. They're not necessarily my cup of tea, but I do see that, they make all these achievements, or they give rewards for achievements as body markings, and you can't see them. Like, what's the point of getting them? But like, it's like, well, what's the point of displaying them? So yeah, I think it's good. But I didn't know that he had said that specifically, and that's really cool. They're paying attention. I feel like they do a good job of paying attention to us.
I'd agree. All the devs are really involved on social media in the community. They interact on streams. They stream themselves now. Some of them. It's and they're very open with giving honest, straightforward answers to sometimes quite tricky questions. I'd say watch Rich Lambert's stream solely for the feedback he gives chat. It's very, very informative. And people ask him questions and he'll say, nah, not happening. Or, yeah, we thought about that.
Yeah.
Or, and it's really entertaining to listen to.
Yes, he's like a no BS kind of guy, and I really appreciate that.
And he's got lovely dogs. They're always in the background.
Yes.
I'm a sucker for dogs on streams. An absolute sucker for dogs on streams. So, anyway, Waking Flame, the DLC release is just one part of a much bigger package of things that we've had to adapt to in-game. So the DLCs always come normally with big patches, and we've had a lot of changes happen to ESO due to the Update 31 patch. Not just the dungeons, not just the new armors. We've had some big base game changes, PvP campaign changes. Was it last year? We had the big no proc meta in Cyrodiil.
Yes.
Where we.
No, I think it was earlier this year.
Was it this year? Oh yeah, you're right. It was this year. Yeah, I'm losing my time. It was from the start of this year till about June this year. We had the no proc meta in Cyrodiil, where they restricted the number of sets that were used to see if it would help the game's engine work better to give better performance on the server. It didn't. But what it did do. is for a lot of players it revitalized their interest in PvP, because when you play on CP enabled Cyrodiil with all the heavy proc sets, the sets that do extra damage based on conditions met by your attacks, that it can be very easy to die quickly. It can be very difficult to kill people. And for a lot of people, it skewed the balance towards the sets that people were using rather than the skills of the player. So a lot of people liked the no proc meta from a gameplay perspective, which is why they have initiated for the no CP campaign, the no champion point campaign, is now no proc sets, but they've expanded the range. I think there's about maybe 25 or so sets that will work that don't have these conditional extra damage triggers. So that campaign's going to be interesting to play. And although at the moment, I will say it's completely dominated by AD. Every single time I've gone into the map the past week, the map has been almost entirely yellow. There's been some big shifts in who plays in which faction. And equally, I think there's been a hemorrhaging of players to other games in the last few months.
Yeah.
So the balance is completely skewed in Cyrodiil over the past few weeks. It's very, very different feel as a DC or an EP player. It's a very, very different feel in those campaigns now. It's all ADs everywhere. ADs pushing, ADs smashing you. It's.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
Why AD is like so alluring, like.
I'm not sure.
No offense to AD players.
Well, yeah. We can't all be perfect and be DC.
I know. No, excuse me, we can't be perfect and be EP.
Yeah, we'll agree to disagree on that one.
Sure.
I think there's been a lot of. I did a lot more PvP at the start of this year than the middle of this year. But one of the big things that happened was a lot of the EP top players moved to AD for reasons completely obscure to me. I don't understand why, but a lot of the big Zerg leaders and ball group leaders moved from EP to AD, and I think a lot of DC players might have jumped ship to New World in recent times, and as a result, so EP PvP lost its strength to AD, and DC have just lost people from the game, I think.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, but equally, the way they've changed the campaign will hopefully bring some people back in, because it's. They also did some things, changed the buffs and the debuffs too. There's a TTK or TTD statistic they look for, time to kill, time to die, in terms of how quickly people are dispatched with in Cyrodiil, and apparently the times were just far too low based on the information they were able to get from the server. People were able to kill you within like a second or 2 seconds. People were able to die so easily because they did lots of things they nerfed health recovery. Health recovery is almost completely absent in Cyrodiil now.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
They did that to stop the everlasting tanks that you could never kill. But as a result, essentially everyone became a lot more squishy, and so it's always a constant balance. They're always chucking in new armor sets. They're always chucking in, and occasionally they'll get new skill lines and changes to skills in skill lines, and it's just a constant balancing act. They see how the game plays, then they'll swing the pendulum the other direction. They see how the game plays, they'll swing the pendulum back again, and there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of churn in terms of players. There's a lot of churn in terms of the gear meta, and it can be exhausting.
I don't know if this is something that came out of the PvP, but it is something that changed. They added a couple new smaller sections to the fitness skill tree, or
yes,
I guess skill tree. They added 3.
3 new sub-constellations in the fitness tree, and a lot of those, from what I've seen from some build guides, they've taken, the fitness tree became very static in CP. There was 5 slottable constellations that were almost always up there, and maybe swap one out maybe for PvP, but they've nerfed some of them so to make the sub-constellation, the new ones, the new slottables from the sub-constellations more effective than existing ones. So there's a bit of a shift towards these new sub-constellations. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I remember when they announced the new skill tree system that they said that they were going to be adding to it. So I think we can expect a lot of like fluidity with that in the future too.
Yes, I agree. Okay, so apart from the Cyrodiil, there was one other big thing I wanted to mention. that's made an absolutely huge difference for me. I don't know. I don't know how it is for other people, but multi-threading. They've changed the way the game interacts with the CPU in PCs, so that instead of using one core of a CPU, it can use all the cores of a CPU for the rendering. Now this has been a huge difference, because I would walk through Daggerfall, I'd walk through Stormhaven, I'd walk through Vivek City, and my PC, which isn't a slouch, it's just an RTX 2070 and an i7 9700, so it's a couple of years old, but it's still pretty decent, especially for a game that was released in 2015 or 2014. I would walk through those towns, and my frame rate would drop from 100 to
Oh my god.
to 60.
Yeah.
Sometimes 40 in some of the bigger towns. And it wasn't GPU limited, it was CPU limited. It's because the CPU was only using one core. With multi-threading, which they've brought in with update 31, I now get a steady top end frame rate everywhere. Even in Blackreach, where I could not play last year.
What about Murkmire?
Murkmire top completely fine.
Oh
Top
my
end
God.
frame rate limited, completely fine.
Wow.
Elsewhere, again, with all the sand effects, oftentimes that would be a killer for frame rate. Fine. This is the crazy thing. I had to actually decrease my frame rate cap from 100 to 80 to allow my GPU to keep up with the extra capacity it was getting from the CPU. So to keep my computer temperatures at a reasonable level and the fan speed and sound at a reasonable level, I brought my frame rate cap back down to 80, which is still sweet, still really smooth. But I don't get any frame drops anywhere. The game's working really, really well, and I hats off to ZeniMax for doing what they did there, because it's future-proofed the game a lot for older PCs. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Means more people can play the game.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. Player numbers is what it's all about with MMOs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention about the new update, the new patch, is that they did something which I think everyone will appreciate, which is they changed the targeting priority, so that so that your character no longer fixates on pets rather than crafting stations. And I've noticed it's made a big difference to my ability to hand my writs in. So I'm very, very happy about that.
I've noticed that too. It's so much nicer, especially when I just, press E, mash it when I'm over there.
Yeah. It can be very, very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that was all that I wanted to talk about with the patch. Nothing else seems to catch my interest. There's lots of new armor sets. There's a couple of new ones for Cyrodiil that are going to be really handy for dealing with ball groups. But I haven't had a chance to play with them yet, so I might talk about them more on the next podcast. But for now...
Some new ones with the new dungeons too as a tank, I just look at the heavy armor sets, and one of them is really good. I think it's the Black Rose one, but maybe we could talk about that once we have experience with them.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
Yeah.
So I think, shall we get into the lore? I'll hand over to you, and you can regale me with some Tamriel Obscura.
Oh wow, okay, so we're getting into that section now. So as I kind of stated before, I like the very small corners of lore in this series, and that's kind of what this big section, or the first section of this, is a lot of my interests, and includes a lot of I think just text people don't read because they're long and a little bit confusing. So my approach to, how my approach has always been, and how it's going to be in this in this venue, is going to be to really kind of be conversational about it, because I think it's more accessible for people to talk about texts like the 36 Lessons of Vivek, and talk about how just kind of really crazy it is, and how kind of insane these words sound. and I'll say this like right up front, like my interpretations, I'm not saying are 100% right. This is just all coming from me. And we have to remember too, these texts, all in-game sources are all secondhand. So even interpretation is really up to the reader, and the reader being myself, and because I'm the one interpreting these for the sake of this podcast. But if you have different interpretations in it, I mean, we're gonna give an email address at the end of this thing, and definitely feel free to email in maybe your different takes on these various things that I go through. And I mean, I love first off, I love being told, hey, actually I think this is what this means, and I love having my mind being massaged, if you will, by other opinions. So always feel free to reach out to us at this email we'll provide at the end of the section. So with all that being said, the first thing that I am really delving into is this overarching noble house in Morrowind. It's kind of like a lesser house, if you will. It's not one of the big five, as we know, are House Redoran, House Lalu, House Induril, House Dress, and House Tovani. This is an old house called House Mora, and specifically we're going to be looking at House Mora and this clan or family within House Mora called the Rathim clan, and that's spelled R-A-T-H-I-M.
Okay. This is new to me. I've never heard of this clan, so this is cool.
Yeah. It intertwines with many characters that you'll know of, that you'll have heard of and read about and even met. So yeah. First off, if you will be so kind, I'm going to pop in the show notes kind of a little bit of a meaty excerpt from the 36 Lessons of Vivek. I'll just post it at the very end. Okay.
Sure. I'll take a look.
If you just be so kind to read it. Give me a second. Let me make it black here.
Let me just get my Google Docs up.
And then we'll kind of talk about this. This quote that I'm having Dave read is going to branch off into many different things that we'll be talking about Clan Rathim and House Mora.
All right.
So whenever you got it up, I'll make it red.
I'm scrolling down. Oh, so you want to read all the text in red?
Yeah, if you'd be so kind.
Sure, I can read this out.
Thank you.
All right, so the warrior poet appeared as a visitation in the ancestor alcove of House Mora, whose rose-worn Prince of Garlands was a hero against the northern demons. Vivek congregated with the bones. He said, "A scavenger cannot acquire a silk sash and expect to discover the greater systems of his predecessor. Perfect happiness is embraced only by the weeping. Give me back, and do so freely, what is barren of my marriage, and I will not erase you from the thought realm of God. Your line has a notable enchantress that my sister Ayem is fond of, and from her murky wisdom alone do I condescend to ask."
Thank you very much for reading that. I very much appreciate that. That was very good. A lot better than I could do, because Vivek is wordy sometimes. So
he is the poet after all, isn't he?
He is the poet. He is. This section comes from Sermon 22 of the 36 Lessons of Vivek. Something that I forgot to mention in my little preface was it's very important to me that I source every one of my articles and things that I talk about. So I will be periodically sourcing where I get my information from. I think when you talk about lore, a lot of people, some people who are more lore gatekeepy like to just say things without sourcing them. So it's very important to me that we source the materials.
Yes.
So everybody can have a chance to read it. That's what I want. But yeah, so going back to that comes from Sermon 22. This sermon kind of starts off. So the warrior poet appearing as a visitation in the ancestor alcove of House Mora. So the ancestor alcove, we can assume is the ancestor tomb. So as as most of us know, the ancestor tomb is a big part of Dunmurray culture. And so Vivek comes from this place called the Provisional House, which is, in my interpretation, a place outside of time. So he kind of goes back. He's going in this sermon, at the beginning of this sermon, he's going back in time and popping into this alcove of House Mora. I'm not exactly sure what time he's going back, but it is, I believe it's before the tribunal. No, it can't be. It's a little bit after the tribunal come to prominence.
Okay.
So sometime in the first era. So he's coming back to this house, and he's looking for one of the children that he sired with Molag Bal. As many people may know, if you don't, Vivek and Molag Bal, in previous sermons, they had relations, and I'll kind of just leave it at that. And they had children, and a lot of the sermons is Vivek like hunting them down. So this particular child is called the Treasurewood Sword, and it's what we can assume is an actual sword. And it's a child of Vivek. Vivek's weird.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yeah, they are very weird. Yes, they are. So Vivek goes to this ancestor tomb of House Mora, because they have the Treasurewood Sword. And the reason they have it is because, or actually, we don't know the reason why they have it, but we know they have it due to some deal with Mephala. Mephala bargained with House Mora and basically told them that they can have this sword. They can keep it. To what ends, we don't know, but House Mora is in possession of one of Vivek's children. This is why he goes to the alcove, to the ancestor tomb. Give me just a few moments here. I'm just catching up on my show notes here. Okay, so in this section, in the quote, we read that he congregated with the bones. So there's this bone walker that appears to him as a bone walker. We know what a bone walker is. It's like what the necromancers kind of summon, but it's like a protector of this tomb, of this House Mora tomb. And the bone walker tells Vivek that, hey, Mephala said that we can have this thing. We can have this Treasurewood sword. So he kind of says, go away, it's out of your hands. And Vivek, I'm pulling up a quote here quickly on what Vivek says. So Vivek basically is like, let's see if I have it in my notes. I want to read a little section. He says to the Bone Walker, serve no guarantees made in my foreimage and demand nothing of its underskin. So serve no guarantees, so basically don't obey any promises, and made in my foreimage, so his anticipation, right? The thing that came before him.
Yeah, yes.
And demand nothing of its underskin, so I'm assuming that means of its brain, or demand nothing of its, person, demand.
Yeah.
I don't believe him. So hearing this, Vivek is like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do. So he goes to he gathers and reaches out to, quote, the Dark Mothers of the Morag Tong. And he finds these Dark Mothers. I don't know where they are, but he finds them. I interpret that Dark Mothers being more as just as general assassins, like assassins of the Morag Tong. And he basically sends them out all into House Mora, and specifically Clan Ratham, and has them the interpretation's a little weird, but ultimately he has them integrate with House Ratham. So from that point on, the Morag Tong and the House Ratham are integrated with one another.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why I enjoy House Ratham so much, is because this sermon kind of shows that they are one and the same, or they have significant influence on on the Morag Tong, or many members come from the Morag Tong. Now again, we can't really give much credence to Vivek being truthful here, because as we all know, he is a notorious liar, and he himself says that he's a liar. So, we don't know how that happens, but we do know for a fact that the Morag Tong and House Ratham are somehow intertwined. So this is one origin of them. These Dark Mothers take the leader of House Mora and put him in the corner, quote unquote, corner of Dagon. So, as we all know, Marin's Dagon is one of the four corners, the four enemies of the Dunmer people.
Yeah.
So he puts them. I'm assuming, being placed in the corner of Dagon, I think pretty much says that he's been banished to the Deadlands. That's what I can assume. And interesting quote that I'm not quite sure where it comes or what it means, but the Morag Tong assassins, made his eyes a fire prayer for the wicked, and his mouth was stuffed with birds.
That doesn't sound very pleasant.
It doesn't sound pleasant. I was reading up on another source. It's called the New Whirling School. It's a website that you can find. They do an annotated 36 lessons of Vivek, basically.
Okay.
They have a very interesting interpretation about this. I recommend people to go to just search the New Whirling School, 36 lessons of Vivek. It's a very interesting read on the annotations here. But yeah, so again, there's a lot of interpretations from this little section of this sermon that we have, but it's basically kind of setting the stage for House Ratham, Clan Ratham, having these larger implications in within the Dunmeri culture. You don't really see a lot of houses or clans really being mentioned in the 36 lessons of Vivek, let alone super small ones. So, yeah.
There has to be a fair amount of significance attached to that then.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of like the big explainer of things now, like the explainer of this house, this clan. And this will be into the part where we start hearing some interesting names. So, Induril Nerevar, his full name is actually Induril Nerevar Mora. So his birth house is that house. And how naming conventions in Dunmeri culture work is it's your great house name first, your actual name, and then your last name, your family name.
Sure.
So, Induril Nerevar Mora. Yeah. So it's very interesting. So, House Mora, Clan Ratham, kind of one and the same, or I guess House Mora is an umbrella house over Clan Ratham.
Clan Ratham, yeah.
And just an interesting connection. So that's something that's one big character that pops up. We'll move into another text called King Edward, and this text shows up in Daggerfall. It's a very long text, and I'll admit I have not read all of it, but I have read most of it. And it's I can't find any sources saying if it's true or not, but I think it's also a historical fiction, an in-game piece of historical fiction, because in this book you get like people riding dragons and like unicorns, which we know there's like likely not that many unicorns.
Not that many in Tamriel. Yeah,
exactly. So in the quote that you so kindly read earlier, Vivek mentioned that he was, let me go back to the quote here. It was that this rose-worn Prince of Garlands was a part of House Mora and who was a hero against the Northern Demons. This rose-worn prince is named Morielin. He is definitely a hero against the Nords. He is a part of the family that were nobility and eventually became rulers of Evenhart. a city that we've all been to many
Indeed,
times.
yes.
Probably.
Indeed.
That's a main place for outfitting for me because it has good lighting.
Oh, of course, yeah, because it's out in the open. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Right there.
Very much so. It's a very good spot, and it's very close to the Way Shrine, as I mentioned quite a few times in my streams, actually. Yeah, it's one of my favourite places to go to. It's one of the quickest ones to get to. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has one of the best temples, at least in my experience, besides Amalexi's temple. But it has one of the best temples in the game, too. I think it's a really, really good one.
Okay.
Like Tribunal temples. But yeah, so this Roseworm Prince, Morrowind, they call him the Roseworm Prince because he wears roses on his armor. I think that's Vivek is very astute. He pays attention, clearly.
Quite literal in his descriptions.
Quite literally, yeah. And so he was around during the first era 416, I believe. That is when the Nords, the first empire of the Nords, made their conquest over into Morrowind. Now that is a fact that just came off the cuff. Let me just check that out here. So Morrowind basically was one of the fighters along with his two brothers, his brother Cruethus and his half-brother Effin. They together fought against the Nords and liberated Ebonheart from Nordic rule, which is pretty cool. Cruethus ended up becoming the king of Ebonheart, so he was the actual bona fide leader of Ebonheart, and Morrowind became the king after Cruethus passed.
Okay.
Morrowind is interesting because in King Edward, we find out that he meets a dragon. He's one of the people that ride the dragon that I was talking about earlier. He meets this dragon in Fang Lair, a dungeon we've all been to as well.
Yes, indeed.
He meets this dragon, a golden dragon, who's living there. He helped remove a cursed tooth from the mouth of this dragon, and was granted an ebony blade that he ended up calling Dragon's Tooth.
Can I just get, so this is a knight who was taught not to kill dragons.
This is a knight. He's not necessarily a knight. He's called a Witch King, which is not a bad. He's not like a bad guy. It's just he's just called a Witch King.
So the reason I say that is because that's what Geralt gets called in a TV show.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because of the golden dragon. It's like the same thing.
Dragon. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I didn't even catch that. Wow, I'm such a bad Witcher fan.
Oh no, you're not. I know you're a crazy Witcher fan. But yeah, it just he's called the Witch King, and it's even more interesting little name connection. It's quite funny.
I know it is really interesting. I think the Witch King of Ebonheart. That's one of his titles. So I thought it was just some interesting tie-ins where this house is tied into Morag Tong, tied into Ebonheart, which we all see, and tied into Fang Lair in a way. So that's Morrowind. This is another interesting character. He's a very interesting character from that King Edward in-game text. You can find all of these texts in full on UESP. UESP.net.
It's a great source.
Yeah, I definitely recommend reading them. Like I said, King Edward is 12 parts, so you don't have to read it all at once, but it's definitely a very, very good, good read, and it's easy to read. Like it flows well. There's a lot of other things that happen with Effin. He's the half brother, so he's not technically of the Rathan clan, but he becomes. I'll just touch very, very shortly on him. He becomes sort of a god or a saint in the Tribunal Temple. There's a cult dedicated to him. He's not really talked about, and we don't really see him a lot in the games, at least in Elder Scrolls Online. But he's a very interesting figure, and maybe we'll talk about him later at another time. But he's definitely interesting. But since he's not technically of Clan Rathan, he's not really going to be a focus because I have at least one other character to focus on. Yeah, we'll just focus on one other character who's my favorite character, who doesn't appear. Well, she's my favorite character who's a small character, I guess you could say. And her name is Kataraya. And we'll know that's the name because Karlaya is like the granddaughter of Kataraya, I think, or distant relative.
Okay.
Kataraya from the Nightingales in Skyrim. And we know that there's a ship I think it's in Solitude's Harbor called the Kataraya. I think during the wedding quest, like someone sails in on that, I think. I could be wrong, but there's a ship named after Kataraya. So she was also from House Mora, Clan Rathan. So, or no, she was from Clan Rathan, so therefore she was also of House Mora.
Therefore also House Mora, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. By this time, and I'm looking up the dates here really quickly, House Mora has integrated with House Floud. Clan Rathan is still doing its own thing. House Mora is definitely like a lesser house underneath House Mora, but Rathan still are the nobility of Ebonheart, and this is in the early Third Era.
Okay.
Talking like Third Era, first 300 years of the First Era, at least. And so, yeah, basically there was this civil war that was happening during the time, either like right before Tiber Septim came into power or right as he came into power. There's this civil war called the War of the Red Diamond, who Potema was involved in. We know Potema as the Wolf Queen.
Yeah.
She basically was just trying to usurp the throne for her own reasons, and the nobility of Ebonheart sided with Potema in this battle. Why they sided with Potema at this time and pretty much the rest of Morrowind was with the Empire, I don't know, but they sided with them. And obviously we know from the Wolf Queen, we know Potema lost and Tiber Septim came to power and the Septim dynasty happened. Yeah. So in order to grant favor with to gain more favor with the Empire again, House Rathan wanted to hold on a second, I'm sorry. Yeah, Clan Rathan wanted to gain favor again with it. So they're like, all right, we need to like set somebody up to maybe have a political marriage. So Kataraya was weeded out as a potential candidate to marry Pelagius III. Well, we know Pelagius III, and I'll touch on him in a second. Kataraya was weeded out by the Empire. She was selected to be the wife of Pelagius because she was, I'm going to find this exact quote here. She was a shrewd diplomat, and she was, I guess I just only wrote shrewd diplomat, but she was a very shrewd diplomat, and she was very good at making decisions because at that time, Pelagius was becoming Pelagius the Mad, and we know him from Sheogorath's questline. I believe it's Sheogorath, where we find his hip bone in Skyrim.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? There's so many like interconnections with this. That's what's so interesting to me about all these pieces. They're just like all these names that you recognize.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Right? So she was set up to be married to Pelagius. They ended up having a child together. And they as in the Empire, the people in the Empire, chose her to basically succeed Pelagius as he was going mad. And a lot of people think that Pelagius went mad due to Potema making him mad. Doing all her witchcraft and stuff because people thought that she was doing that, and maybe there's some weight to that, maybe not. You're gonna have to do the quest in Skyrim.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Yeah, so that's basically the reason why. And she became the first, and as far as I know, the only Dunmeri ruler of the Empire, which is
Wow.
pretty freaking badass, I think.
And she was a member of Clan Rathan and House Mora.
Member of Clan Rathan, House Mora. Yep, the same house that's tied with the Morag Tong, the same house that's tied with the Ebonheart nobility. At the time when she was picked out, she was actually serving as a Duchess of Vardenfell.
Okay.
We can
I wonder if she stood like the Duchesses do in ESO. That
yeah,
personality.
with the hand out,
Yep.
with the hand out, and the nose turned up. Yeah. So she became Kataraya the First. She was called Empress Regent, and her reign lasted for 46 years.
That's quite a long time.
Yeah, quite a long time. And it was known as being the Empire's most celebrated years, the Third Empire's most celebrated years. So apparently it was a very good rule. A lot of people didn't like her, obviously, because she was a Dunmer. But I think the facts stood as they were, that they were very prosperous years.
Wow.
Some people called Kataraya's ascension to power, or to her empressness, as the decline of the Septim dynasty, though, because her son was a half Dunmer, Tamriel. He ended up becoming the king after that, or the emperor after that, and then kind of deteriorated from there. It was a lot of different things that happened after that, but yeah.
So short-term gain for long-term loss of dynasty, I guess, for the Septims.
Absolutely, and I think there was a lot of other things that were happening as well. There's a lot of internal strife, but it's cool to see that. That's why she's one of my favorite characters in the lore, because she was a freaking empress of the Empire. Like, come on, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's hardcore. That's you can't get much higher than that.
You cannot. And that she was a good empress too. You know, not even that it was like, she usurped the throne or something like that through war or something. I don't know. But I won't go over these other characters, but other notable figures from House Rathan, or from Clan Rathan, excuse me, are Baron Zaya, as who we all know who Baron Zaya is.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's a name that causes shivers of pain for Skyrim players.
Yeah.
Trying to collect all their stones.
Shivers of pain and shivers of other things when they read her story, her exploits with Khajiit and Dunmer alike.
Oh, I have not partaken in that source of literature. I must check out the Imperial Library when the podcast finishes.
You should. Okay. You would enjoy it. It's the real Baron Zaya. Oh, there's two. There's one, the real Baron Zaya, and then there's another text too. I forgot the name of it, but it's also about Baron Zaya.
Spicy text. Wonderful.
Yeah, spicy text. Another one of those in-game works of fiction. One of them is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, yeah, and then
that's added to my reading material.
Yes, it's a good one. And then the other name that I mentioned already was Karlaya, because she's related to Kataraya. So Karlaya is, as we know, the Nightingale. She's also very badass in the game, and she's one of the coolest characters.
It's one of the NPCs that sticks in the memory from that particular quest line.
Yeah, she's cool. I really like her a lot. But yeah, there was a smattering of other others, mostly nobles that you encounter in the other various games. But Clan Rathan has a very big influence on Morrowind over the eras. And, you wouldn't really expect it from a house that doesn't have any claim to Morrowind's society, I guess, or to Morrowind's system, like House Redder or Tavani might.
It's the hidden power. I mean, it's the connection to the Morag Tongs, obviously. It also explains why there's still nobility even in the Third Age, Third Era. Nobility need to have a source of income, and I guess the Morag Tong have a fairly good source of income.
Yeah, and we're led to believe that they pretty much held Ebonheart's, held Ebonheart they serve as leaders of Ebonheart well
Mhm.
until the Third Era.
That's
So
cool.
that's 3 eras, yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's my section. I know it was a little rambly. Apologies. That was
Oh, that was
first to go
wonderful.
about, but
That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for giving us that little glimpse into Dunmer history. That was wonderful.
absolutely. Thank you.
So in game you've disappeared. You logged out. I think game kicked you.
Aw, man. Okay, I'll log back. Maybe I'm just expressing my more tongueness, and I just
Yes, you're
disappeared.
just disappearing. Well, to talk about a pivot, we're going to go from Nightingales to Nightshade as we switch from Tamriel Obscura to Cynical Alchemy, which is my little segment of this of the lore deep dives that we're going to be doing. So I'll give a little bit of background as to how I'm going to approach this particular aspect of lore, because it's not just going to be confined to the world of Tamriel, and there's going to be some specific reasons for that. Now, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I am a scientist in real life. That's my day job. That's what I have to do when I'm not playing ESO. Specifically, I'm a chemist, which is why my gamer tag has the word alchemy in it. So when I do an RPG of any type, or whether it's science fiction, whether it's fantasy, when I see alchemy, when I see chemistry in game, I approach it in a very particular way, because in many cases I understand the chemical underpinning of many of the effects that are used for common poisons or other reagents, and in combination with that chemical understanding, I also have a deep love for the history of science. And often when you look into the understanding or the discovery of some of these poisons or chemicals, you find a lot of really curious, funny little things. So I've always been interested in that in the real world. So what I'm going to try to do with this segment is I'm going to try and bring that same kind of approach to in-game alchemy, understanding, trying to connect what the reagent is, what it does, with how it's actually encountered in the game. So my plan will be that I'll talk about the in-game reagent, how we use it in game. I'll talk about whether there's a real-world analog, and how that analog was discovered and used, and even how it was talked about in antiquity and folklore. Because I think that's a nice little pivot point between the real world and the game world, because we have our mythology, we have our folklore, which is our fantasy, which is our real-world fantasy. And a lot of these reagents are very prominent in those types of common knowledge, common history. But because I'm a chemist, I want to think about how it affects the human body, and how that is expressed in the real world relative to the game world. So there's going to be a lot of crossover here between reality and fiction. But the common central rock, the point of pivoting, is going to be the actual reagent itself. So I mentioned Nightshade. Nightshade is my choice for the first episode. It's a very, very common poison in Elder Scrolls games. It's very easily recognisable because in the game they make it like it is in the real world, which is a green plant with purple flowers. It's a lot more recognisable in Skyrim, I'd say. In ESO, quite often from a distance you'll mistake it for Blessed Thistle because the purple flowers are quite small in ESO. But it's there in the game. We harvest it all the time. And it's harvested a lot in game.
Yeah, I feel like I come upon it quite a lot.
Yes.
Just, grassy areas, anything really.
And one of the reasons it's harvested a lot is because in ESO it's part of the meta for damage dealing. It's one of the reagents that is both a long-term health damage and a short-term health damage, ravage health and gradual ravage health, which means that in combination with another two reagents, it is the poison you slot when you want to do meta DPS. And it's the mirror of the crown damage health poison that you get, which has also got the long and the short-term health damage. So it's integral to meta gameplay, Nightshade. So it's a very prominent reagent in ESO. Interestingly, it does have some other aspects of its damaging in ESO. It also causes vulnerability and reduced healing. So it is probably the hardest hitting of any reagent that causes damage in the game. It's got the long and short term effect. It essentially debuffs you with some vulnerability and reduces your ability to heal. So if it was able just to do its job as a single reagent, it'd be crazy powerful. But you always have to pair these reagents with at least one other that's got the same trait to actually get the trait in the poison you're using. So it's an interesting set of 4 attributes for a reagent. It's very, very powerful. In Skyrim, the lingering effect isn't on health recovery, isn't on health, it's on stamina, and it reduces magic regen. So it's not quite as powerful, you would say, as a poison in Skyrim as an ESO, but it's still pretty tough. And obviously, I'm not a big alchemy user in Skyrim in general, but ESO is a game where you can't get past using alchemy. It's part of the meta for all aspects of the game.
You absolutely need to use alchemy there. I know there's people who do crazy. Well, this is tangential, but it would be cool to do like a Witcher build where you have like alchemy as one of your main sources of damage. That'd be cool.
Yes, funnily enough, it's one of the reasons I like using the Clever Alchemist armor set in Cyrodiil. Clever Alchemy is a crafted set that you can that procs a significant weapon damage when you glug down a potion, and it's the meta for some builds in Cyrodiil. And I think it's very Witcher-like. You take a potion and suddenly you get a massive boost of weapon damage. So
that's very Witcher-like.
Yeah, so I like using it for Geralt, my Stamsorg.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Appropriate.
Indeed, it is very appropriate. But that's the in-game Nightshade. I find the real life Nightshade is even more interesting than in-game Nightshade. So I'll spend a bit of time talking about that. The Latin name for deadly Nightshade is Atropa belladonna. Now, most organisms in the real world have got this Latin nomenclature, this 2 component to the naming, so like Homo sapiens, Canis familiaris, and it's the same for plants. Atropa belladonna. It was given this name by Carl Linnaeus, the botanist who actually developed this naming structure for organisms in the real world. But the name itself is steeped in history. It's steeped in the properties of the poison. Atropos is one of the 3 mythic Greek fates, the pseudo-goddesses that determine the outcome of all things. Atropos is the goddess that cuts the thread of life. It's the goddess that ensures that beings come to an end, that they die. So I think that's a wonderful first part to the name of this deadly Nightshade, which is a really, really powerful poison.
Appropriate, yeah.
So I love the connections to antiquity with these things. Again, it's this bridge between fantasy universes and the mythic past of our own universe. So I love it when science leans into these things. The other part of the name belladonna is Italian for beautiful lady, and it's not a question. And in many areas of science, there's an inherent misogyny that has reared its head. But this isn't an incidence of it. It's not saying that all women are deadly. It's specifically named belladonna because extract of nightshade was used in the Renaissance Italy by women to increase the dilation of their pupils. They actually put drops of nightshade extract into their eye to widen their pupils so they would look more beautiful. So it wasn't its use as a poison that Carl Linnaeus was using for the name. He was using its use in the 1400s and 1500s by Italian women to make themselves more beautiful. Again, a really, really interesting historical connection. But it's a poison. It's a very, very deadly poison. It's incredibly dangerous. The fruit is appealing to the eye and has resulted in many, many accidental poisonings over the centuries and millennia. But this is like
blueberries, kind of. I mean, they could be looking like blueberries.
Yeah, exactly. They're a very, very attractive looking fruit. So if you don't know what you're looking for, you might just pop it in your mouth and you'd be in trouble. But interesting. This is. I love this part. It's not the part of the plant that's got the most poison. The berry doesn't have the most poison. The active chemical that causes the poisoning is only present in sparing amounts in the berries. Now, I thought how I could explain this. If this was a Harry Potter lorecast, I would tell you that the half-blood prince would have annotated his potion book to tell you to grind the leaves or the roots and not to crush the berries.
Okay.
Because it's the leaves and the roots that have almost 5 times as much of the active chemical than the berry does.
Well, that makes sense to me in a way, because if, berries, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like fruit are the mode of transportation for most seeds, like,
True.
Animals eat it and
True.
stuff.
You want
it makes sense that...
Yeah, it makes sense that it wouldn't be the thing that kills the thing that's eating it.
Yeah, or not poisonous, but not the most poisonous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Curiously, actually, there are some animals that aren't affected by nightshade poison. Rabbits, cows, and bees do not get affected by the poison of nightshade. But apparently there are incidental poisonings by people consuming rabbits who've consumed too much nightshade.
Oh wow.
Because the chemical will accumulate in the system of the rabbit. It won't do anything to the rabbit, but it'll do something to the people who eat the rabbits.
Interesting. Wow, that's crazy. So I guess you'd have to be careful if you're a hunter in places where you have nightshade bushes.
Yeah. See, it's little things like this. This is the kind of information about the real world that I think could play well in fiction writing or in game narrative design. Pulling up these tiny little details that grounded in the real world but have got really interesting implications in game space. So it's the reason I get so interested in these little snippets, because it's reality, but it has so much potential in a game universe. For example, honeys, the bee of honeys that take nectar from nightshade, the honey of those bees is imbued with the chemical that can kill. So if you were an assassin that perhaps wanted to kill a victim, you might just substitute their honey for some nightshade infused honey, which I think is pretty cool.
I think you're having nice honey with your toast or with your biscuit or something, and
yeah, goodbye.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'll actually talk a little bit about the chemical now. The chemical itself is called an alkaloid. Now that's a chemical name for something that contains a particular structure and a particular arrangement of chemical elements. So I won't get into that. That's just hardcore chemistry. But everyone knows and ingests alkaloids. Everyone. Why do I know this? It's because caffeine is an alkaloid. Nicotine is an alkaloid. Quinine and ephedrine are medical alkaloids. So these are stimulants, medicines, but they're also toxic versions. And the toxic variant you get from nightshade is called atropine, and it's named after Atropas, obviously the Greek fate, and that's the chemical that does the damage for nightshade. And it does it in a very interesting way. It shuts down your nervous system. It shuts down the body's involuntary responses. It affects your breathing. It affects involuntary muscle contraction, which is why it works on the pupils. And it causes so many effects. And because nightshade poisoning was so prevalent, clinicians actually came up with a little mnemonic so they could actually recognise the symptoms. It goes like this: hot as a hare, blind as a bat, dry as a bone, red as a beet, mad as a hen. Now that's like a poem you'd find in an in-game text, It's rooted in the medical effect of the atropine. It affects your ability to regulate temperature. It causes your vision to blur because your pupils dilate. Your salivary glands stop functioning. Your skin vasculature dilates and you get red, and you start to hallucinate and gibber. So those are all the effects of atropine when it gets into the human body. So it is an incredibly powerful and nasty poison, which is why it's used in game in our heavy poisons.
Well, that sounds horrible. Like, if you if you ingest it, there's no cures.
Oh, there are plant-based cures. In fact, interestingly, there is actually a plant-based antidote for atropine, and it can be combated. So that's fine. But interestingly, I was just about to pivot across to the medical chemical side to actually how nightshade actually appears in our own history and our own mythology. It actually appears in the story of the Odyssey, in the story of Odysseus. In ancient Greek times, the witch Circe poisoned Odysseus' crew with Nightshade, and Odysseus only escaped the fate of the poisoning by actually taking a plant-based antidote. So it's and that's rooted in fact that you could actually combat Nightshade with other remedies. So it's not a fatal toxin. It can actually can be treated. But interestingly as well, I mentioned the connection to the name Belladonna, the ladies in Renaissance Italy. But it could have also been given that same name, not from more recent history, but from ancient history, because Nightshade was used by two emperors' wives to kill their husbands in ancient Rome. I mentioned this to Livia before the podcast started because I thought it was hilarious, because one of these emperors' wives was called Livia Drusillis, and she killed Emperor Augustus in Rome a long, long time ago using Nightshade, which I thought was quite amusing.
Probably deserved it.
I'm sure he did deserve it. Now, that's a connection to Livia. There's also a connection to me. And this is historical. This isn't talking about plays by Shakespeare. The Macbeth of history used Nightshade to poison English troops during a truce negotiation in the 1000s. And as a Scot, and Macbeth is actually my clan tartan, I'm very much approve of that use of Nightshade in the real in historical actuality.
What cool connections! That's awesome.
So, but anyway, its use in warfare is widespread as well, because I mean, people in antiquity would dip their arrows with it. And I'll get back to dipping weapons in Nightshade at the very end of this segment. But those are historical things. The mythic encounters, I think, are much more interesting, and this is where I can pivot a little bit into Elder Scrolls. I've talked about Circe, but the one that's most interesting is that Nightshade was heavily used by the devotees of Bacchus and Dionysius, the Roman and Greek gods of debauchery. They used Nightshade in wine to make the effect of wine stronger, to make people more... make the wine more mind-altering, to lower people's inhibitions even further, to fuel the debauchery of the worship of these two Roman gods. Now, when I start talking about a god that likes to drink wine and encourages debauchery, in ESO we have Sanguine, the Daedric prince, who is essentially the ESO version of Bacchus. Now, this is where I get quite excited, because there's such a strong resonance, such a strong parallel between ancient mythology of our world and the mythology of the game. But this is the point where they didn't actually make a best use of it, because nowhere in the game, in ESO games or Elder Scrolls games, have I found anything that connects Sanguine, worship of Sanguine, with the use of Nightshade. In spite of the fact that in the real world it was heavily connected to that same type of worship. And I had a little think about that. I mean, why wouldn't they have picked up on this? And then I thought, skooma.
Right. Skooma's the main drug.
Yeah, you don't need Nightshade in your wine to worship Sanguine. You just take some skooma.
Or even the non-distilled version, just a little bit of moon sugar, where it's hallucinogenic to everybody else. But yeah, exactly, same idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's So anyway, so they didn't need to use it for Sanguine, but I think it was a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the direct connection in Bacchus literally being, like as you described him, that's Sanguine.
Yeah. So the only other prominent folklore, real-world folklore reference I can find for Nightshade is its use in making what was called a flying ointment. It was implicated in witchcraft. People who would practice witchcraft would make this potion, which would alter their mental state, which the lay people, the people who weren't into witchcraft, assumed that it helped them fly, but it didn't. It just helped them mentally fly. It just helped them
get high.
Yeah, to get high, essentially. And also, I found I found a couple of good literature references, actual real-world journal articles talking about this. There was also connections to the behaviour of people who were accused of being werewolves. People would wear furs and go and have fits of bestial rage, and they would have used this ointment which contained Nightshade.
Thing here, just to add, this is very impromptu, but this cosmetic adornment, it is I can't believe I didn't think of that before. Wolfsbane. Oh, I thought it was Nightshade, but it's called Wolfsbane for. But look at what it looks like in game. It's a little pink flower, just like the Nightshade is
Okay.
in real life.
Cool.
Interesting.
Oh, that's in your hair.
Right, yeah, it's in my hair.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's cool.
Interesting. Sorry, I thought it was Nightshade, but it says Wolfsbane. I apologize. And I think Wolfsbane is a real thing too, right?
Yeah. But actually, I mean, to pivot back to Elder Scrolls and bring this segment to a bit of a close, Nightshade doesn't appear in many quests in Elder Scrolls games. It appears in Skyrim as a fetch quest for Ingen Blackbriar. Because she's at the alchemist shop in Riften, and that's her she's not like her mother Maven. She's into alchemy. And
she's not cool like her mother, maybe. Sorry.
Not cool like her mother, exactly. And she sends you off to get 20 segments of Nightshade. But it really doesn't appear in too many other quest points within Elder Scrolls games. But it does appear in a number of lore books. It's in a couple of very, very important lore books. Actually, you mentioned moonsugar. It actually appears in an ESO lore book called Proven Moonsugar Fertilization Techniques. And it's used as a component of grass fertilizer for cultivating moonsugar, which maybe allows me to make that connection to Sanguine. Maybe the atropine's getting from the Nightshade into the moonsugar, and that's what's causing some of the hallucinogenic effects of actually skooma. So,
yeah, that's interesting because, I wonder. That's an interesting implication because. Does that mean moonsugar is inherently hallucinogenic, or is it hallucinogenic because of
the way it's cultivated?
That, you know?
Yeah. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Other places it appears in a quest clue in ESO in Sun and Shadows to-do list. It's called. It's from the quest line in Morrowind. Sun and Shadow is I think the character that wants to become a Tivani mage. I think, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, that's her. One who's cruel to her lover.
Yes.
Who's Argonian. Yeah.
But the interesting thing about this lore reference is that in her to-do list it says distill remaining Nightshade and store. Now that's just a passing reference, and it's obviously she's a mage, so she's doing some alchemy. But as a chemist, it's when somebody drags their fingernails down a blackboard. When I read that, I got the same feeling, because as a chemist, I know that the active chemical in Nightshade is not a liquid. It's a solid component, and you wouldn't extract it by distilling it. You would recrystallize it. So that's how you purify solid materials. You dissolve them in a solvent, you heat it up, and then you slowly let it cool, and it will come out as a crystal, as a pure crystal. So atropine would be purified by recrystallization. It would be purified by distillation. So that's just the inner chemistry nerd in me coming out and correcting what is a lore mistake, because Nightshade, distillation is what you use to separate liquids. It's what you use to separate ethanol from water or other miscible liquids which will blend and completely mix, and use distillation to make use of the different boiling points of the two different liquids to purify one or the other. So yeah, you don't distill atropine out of Nightshade. You recrystallize it. Anyway, I'll stop being a chemistry nerd. Well, actually I won't, but I'll move on from that point.
It's cool.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I said no. It's cool. I was just saying, don't stop being a chemistry nerd.
Yeah, I can't help myself. It appears in another couple of places. Interestingly, one place it appears is a lore book called Special Flora of Tamriel, which appears in Elder Scrolls 2 and 4, I think. And this was a nice little interesting mention. Apparently, Nightshade is cherished by the Khajiit. That's the phrase it uses. It's cherished by the Khajiit, and used by thieves, and they tuck the Nightshade into their armor to help them be more invisible. Now, that's not connected to any of the attributes given to the poison in game. So it made me think, could I find a way to connect this to the way that Nightshade actually really works in the real world? So I think about it.
Yeah.
They tuck it in their armor, so it's likely having an effect on them, rather than on anyone who would be observing them. Yeah?
Yeah, I would assume so.
So, if you follow me from that logical footprint to the next one, there is something that could help here in the real world effect of atropine. If enough of the atropine was able to pass through their skin into their system, it would affect the relaxation of involuntary muscles, like the muscles in their eye. So it could act to actually dilate their pupils, which would give them better night vision, which would mean they would see their pursuers before their pursuers saw them, and thus make them appear more invisible.
Wow.
So
that's a good one. That's a good connection.
Yeah, I really like that. When I saw that I could draw a connection between what the Nightshade actually does and to actually connect up to the lore there. Because the only thing that I can think of, because there was no straightforward connection to the effect of the reagent in game, I thought I'd just pull on that one and say yes, that's my headcanon for why Nightshade is liked by the Khajiit.
I mean, as long as you can back it up, and what you did, you backed it up with actual sources.
Yep. So a different example, there's another book called The Herbalist's Guide to Skyrim. This is an Elder Scrolls V lore book. An author is Agneta Falia. She mentions that Nightshade is used in combination with other reagents to induce stiffening of joints and a lack of mobility on the battlefield when applied by a person trying to injure someone else. So if somebody had it on their blade or on their arrow, they could induce a degree of immobilization on their opponent. Now, immobilization potions are replete in Elder Scrolls. Hindrance is the attribute in Alchemy and Elder Scrolls Online, but Nightshade doesn't have any attributes of hindrance. But I actually looked back to see if there was any other mentions of Nightshade attributes that could fit this. And although I won't often talk about Oblivion, in Elder Scrolls 4, one of the effects of Nightshade is to cause burden. If you're affected by it, it can essentially decrease your ability to carry heavy loads. So I thought, well, in this case, it could be that combined with something else, it will bring this attribute to the potion or the poison to essentially make someone feel that they can no longer move in their heavy armor and would thus stiffen their movement. So there is an in-game lore connection to how that might actually occur. Unlike the case with the Khajiit, where I had to bring it out to the real world, in that case there is an in-game potential explanation for that, but you'd have to go back to Elder Scrolls 4 to actually get the attribute that would be required to have that effect in-game.
Yeah, and I think that's a great connection, because if it's, gonna immobilize someone, and you're carrying too much, I admittedly didn't play Oblivion, but I don't know how slow you walk, but in Skyrim and Morrowind it's horrible.
Yes.
In Skyrim specifically.
If you're overburdened, your movement speed is much lessened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the last couple of lore references I could find to it in game are quite fun. One is there's a book called Practical Necromancy, where Nightshade is burnt and is essentially volatilized. It's made as a smoke to affect a spirit and thus allow it to be bound to a corporeal object, to a geode. And I was thinking, well, maybe it prevents, in the real world, it prevents involuntary responses. It prevents, it can often stop breathing, it can stop your muscles from contracting. Maybe in this case, it's preventing the natural involuntary pulling back from corporeal objects of a spirit to allow it to be bound to that corporeal object. So again, it was a real world connection to potentially an in-game lore use.
Yeah, that's a good source too. Practical Necromancy is a very fantastic read.
It's so one thing I won't talk too much about. It's actually mentioned as a cure for vampirism in Elder Scrolls 4 as a quest item. There's a shopping list you're given by a character who cures your character of vampirism, and Nightshade's one of those things. But I couldn't think though of any way in game or out of game that I could connect the actions of Nightshade to that purpose.
Yeah, because it's not like when you have vampirism, really any of that stuff is working.
No.
You already have enhanced vision. I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
But the very last one I found, I saved this especially for last, is and most people who are listening might already be aware of this, Nightshade is used in the Black Sacrament. It is
the B team.
Yep, the B team, not the Morrowind. Dark Brotherhood. The Black Sacrament requires you to, among other things, to smear your blade with Nightshade while you're calling on the Night Mother. And the Black Sacrament is such a major part of Elder Scrolls games. Nightshade is implicated in one of the most important rituals that players will ever do in the game. It's part of the Black Sacrament. Now, in terms of what role it's playing in that sacrament, nothing about that action of smearing atropine or the essence of Nightshade on your blade, I think, would do anything other than let the Night Mother know that you mean business.
Yeah, like you're ready to kill if you need to.
You're ready to kill, and kill in whatever manner it takes.
Yeah. Or, okay, so, well, you're supposed to get a heart, right? It's not... You're supposed to kill somebody to make the Black Sacrament. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the heart as the muscle. I don't know. Maybe there's some connection.
That's a cool thing.
That.
And maybe some way to stop a heart beating, stop the muscle
Yeah.
contractions. Yeah, I can see that.
Maybe.
Yeah. As I say, because it's not something. It's not I mean, maybe in the game it's different. Maybe in the game the chemical part of Nightshade that works is in some way more easily brought into the atmosphere. But the smearing on a weapon would just essentially put the poison on the weapon to then be used and have its effect when you actually use the blade, rather than to actually create an environment or a mist or something that would facilitate the communing with the Night Mother.
Like a summoning of her. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So that was my little odyssey through Nightshade. It's in-game use, its real-world effects, its real-world history and mythology, and then connecting back up to how it's experienced in game through the lore of the game. I was really happy I picked it after I started reading, because I wasn't sure whether the first region I chose was going to be a good one to use, but this one was surprisingly impactful, both in terms of its use in game and its connection with lore, both for us in the real world and the game lore.
That was really cool. I enjoyed that, and I'm not just saying that just for the sake of the podcast or what we're doing here. That was very interesting. Like, just I love the threads through everything and how you tied it into in game, and how it really, honestly, how our real history, or I guess I should say how in game really parallels a lot of our real world stuff.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and it kind of shows that they paid attention and they really gathered a lot of they grounded everything in reality in Elder Scrolls. That's something that I love, because you have like crazy animals and crazy plant life, but you also have very real animals and plant life too.
Yeah, you do.
I think it's interesting.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's the reason I'm looking forward to exploring more reagents in future episodes is because alchemy is one of those parts of the game that crosses over between the real world and the fictional world. It's they do listen. They do pay attention. A lot of the alchemy is grounded in real world effects, real world plants, real world herbs. So in the future episodes, I'll pull out more of these types of things and try and do the same thing. Give a bit of both, the real world, the fantasy world.
Do the very real and grounded Nern root that appears in our real world.
Well, yeah, Nernroot is perhaps not one I'll deal with in the next episode. That's going to be a little more troublesome. But there are others that will be a little bit easier.
Yeah. Or actually do red Nernroot, That's the most rarest plant in game. This is very tangential, but I never knew this or saw this portion of Skyrim, which I want to now. Apparently, like when you go to Solstheim, there's like this island you can go to, and there's this like dead guy, I think he's a Dunmer, with this giant Nernroot, and then Nernroot's like the size of a person.
Whoa! Is the volume as increased as the size is?
That I don't know.
That'd be definitely.
I was just watching a video with someone talking over, but yeah, it would, wouldn't it? But this, yeah, I thought of you when I saw that video because this guy was like going to find this like Nern roots, and he ended up dying because it got that big because of a spriggan. And I was like, oh man, that's like such a discovery. I don't know. I just thought of you like a scientist wanting to discover.
Yeah, being a scientist going off on an expedition that ultimately causes their death. That's cool.
Right, yeah. Anyways, that's tangential. I apologize.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So we've covered both of our lore segments. I think that. Did you want to talk a little bit about the book, the book club?
Oh yeah. So I was doing the every Sunday, every Lordas. I was suggesting a book for people to read. So I kind of stopped that, and I'm going to suggest a book now here for people to read. And I'm going to go and suggest King Edward. And I know I prefaced that it was a very long book, so I recommend, or I'm suggesting people over the course of this month, or whenever you're listening to this. Whenever you're listening to this recording, to just check out King Edward. Read it, skim it, glean what you can from it, and just, drop an email, which our email is, I did not write it down, I forgot. It's raven@quillandvial.net. So, again, that's raven@quillandvial.net. Email us about your thoughts on King Edward, your thoughts on anything that we talked about today, your thoughts on Nightshade, how you use it, how you find it most effective use in your adventures in Tamriel, and really, just let us know anything. We want to have a section where we read people's emails, regardless of what they are, as long as they're Elder Scrolls related. We'll check it out.
So please do contact us. This VOD will, once we finish the recording, the VOD will go up on Twitch within 24 hours. After 24 hours of exclusivity on Twitch, because of my affiliate status, we'll be able to upload it onto Liv's YouTube channel. So the VOD will be available on both channels. It will be available forever on YouTube. It will be available for 3 months on Twitch. Because I'm not a partner or anything, so my VODs essentially drop off my list after a certain amount of time. But
not partner yet.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm not partner yet. Yes, well, I'm not sure I'll ever get to that point. It's not one of my ambitions. I'm just here to have fun and interact, and it's But we have recorded the audio for this, and we will be tidying it up, giving it a new backing track, and uploading it to wherever you listen to podcasts, which is, we haven't figured out yet, but most likely Spotify, most likely SoundCloud, maybe some other platforms as well. But we will be producing a edited version. Not that we'll cut things out, but just we'll clean up the audio and change the backing track. Because at the moment you're listening to Mother Morrowind's Sacred Lullaby, which is a music box that Livia gifted me a while back.
It's a lovely one.
Yes.
I like it.
So
for now we'll just upload it to YouTube. We will definitely keep you updated on the just audio platforms that we put it on. That's still in the works, but we'll have it up by next episode.
Indeed, yes. Indeed, we will. So, to all the listeners who joined the live recording, to all the listeners who will listen to the podcast, thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for spending the time listening to us ramble on in various ways about various things. I hope that some of the things that we've covered, I've given you some new insights, some new information, or just reminded you about things you might have known, made you smile, made you laugh, made you think. And we shall be back in a month's time, the last Saturday of each month, for episode 2 of the Quill and Vial.
Yeah, thank you for all coming and for listening to the first episode of this little endeavor. We can't wait to do more.
All right, so we'll end the stream there. So everyone, take care, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.